In the streets of New Orleans, music was more than rhythm, it was survival. From the Creole kitchens to the church pews, from juke joints to Bourbon Street, a chubby young pianist named Antoine Fats Domino would rise from the Ninth Ward to shape what the world would soon call rock and roll. He was humble, soft-spoken, yet his sound carried across racial lines, bridging a divided America with the beat of joy. But behind the swing and smiles lay a deeper truth, a world of payola, segregation, and music industry deceit that shaped, silenced, and sometimes consumed Black legends. Tonight, we tell the story of Fats Domino, the man, the myth, and the mystery. Before fame, before the gold records and flashing lights, there was New Orleans, a city alive with rhythm, sweat, and the scent of gumbo. In the 1920s, the lower Ninth Ward was a place where neighbors spoke Creole, kids made music on tin cans, and faith sat at every dinner table. There, on February 26, 1928, Antoine Domino Jr. was born, the youngest of 8 children. His father played fiddle at local gatherings, his mother sang hymns that echoed through the wood-framed house. From the very start, sound was his language. By the age of 10, the small boy they called Fats, for his round cheeks and hearty appetite, had already found his first love, the piano. He watched his brother-in-law Harrison Verrett, a seasoned musician, glide across the keys. When Verrett left the room, Fats mimicked every note from memory. He learned by ear, not from books, but from feel. In the years of the Great Depression, when work was scarce and segregation law was gospel, music was more than joy, it was escape. Fats played at neighborhood fish fries and corner bars, where patrons paid in coins or food. His style, rolling left-hand bass, bright right-hand melodies, came straight from the heart of the South. It was Creole blues with a church soul, a rhythm no one could teach. By his late teens, word spread through the ward. There's a boy down on Caffin Avenue who makes that piano talk. Soon, local bandleader Billy Diamond invited him to join his group. It was Diamond who gave him the nickname that would stick forever, "You play like Fats Waller, we'll call you Fats Domino." At night, Fats performed in honky-tonks where laughter mixed with danger. These were the rough joints, smoky, loud, sometimes violent, but they were also incubators of culture. In the corner of each room, that piano carried the pulse of the people, laughter, heartbreak, rebellion. Then came Dave Bartholomew, a sharp-eared trumpeter, arranger, and producer who saw in Fats not just talent, but a revolution. He brought him to Cosimo Matassa's J&M studio, a humble space on Rampart Street where the walls sweated history. In 1949, they recorded The Fat Man. No one in that studio knew it yet, but what they captured that night, that thick piano line, Fats's laughter and lyric, and the deep backbeat of New Orleans, would become the heartbeat of rock and roll. The record sold over 1 million copies, unheard of for a Black artist at the time. White America was dancing to a sound born in the swamps and sanctuaries of the South. And in that moment, Antoine Fats Domino Jr. became something new. The bridge between the juke joint and the jukebox. Between segregation and swing. Between the struggle and the smile. By 1950, Fats Domino was no longer just a local piano man, he was the spark in a new kind of fire. America was still a country divided by color, but in the world of music, something was shifting beneath the surface. The youth, black and white, were restless. They wanted rhythm, rebellion, and release. And Fats gave them all three. When he hit the stage, he didn't move like Elvis or scream like Little Richard. He just smiled, sat at that piano, and let the music do the talking. It wasn't showmanship, it was communion. And audiences felt it. Cue crowd sounds, cheers, screams, the shuffle of dancing feet. In smoky dance halls across the South, young people from both sides of segregation lines came to see him. Sometimes they danced together, breaking unwritten laws. Sometimes the police stormed in, shutting down the shows. At one concert in 1956, chaos erupted, chairs flew, people ran, shots rang out, all because black and white teenagers dared to share a dance floor. And yet, Fats Domino never stopped smiling. He wasn't political in speech, but his music was revolution in rhythm. Then came the song that would define his career, Blueberry Hill. Originally a pop tune from the 1940s, Fats made it his own, turning it into a slow, soulful prayer. His soft drawl, his rolling piano, that lazy, loving groove, it was pure New Orleans, pure Fats. It spent weeks at number 2 on the pop charts, number 1 on the R&B. For the first time, white America couldn't deny it, this was more than rhythm and blues. It was universal. He had done the impossible, crossed over without crossing out his blackness. But the road to stardom came with a cost. In a time when Jim Crow ruled the land, hotels refused him, restaurants barred his band, and radio stations often hesitated to play race records. So promoters had to disguise his music, labeling it dance music or rhythm pop to sneak it onto white airwaves. That's how racism worked in the record business: invisible, coded, profitable. When white singer Pat Boone released a sanitized version of Ain't That a Shame, it climbed even higher on the pop charts. Boone didn't mean harm, but he benefited from a system that rewarded imitation over authenticity. His version made suburban America feel safe, while Domino's original remained too black for mainstream radio. The irony? Boone's fame came from a song written by a man who couldn't even check into his own concert hotels. Still, Fats didn't protest. He kept touring, kept smiling, kept playing. He let the music speak louder than any confrontation. In his quiet way, he did what the marches and speeches would soon do: he broke the color line, one chord at a time. Even Elvis knew the truth. He said it himself, that's the real king right there. Because before Presley shook his hips, before Chuck Berry duck-walked, before Little Richard screamed tutti frutti, there was Fats, smiling behind a piano, turning gospel rhythm into the universal language of youth. By 1957, Fats Domino had sold more records than any other black artist in America. He had crossed barriers no one thought could be crossed, not by protest, but by joy. And in doing so, he redefined what it meant to be heard in a divided land. He didn't walk the line, he walked through it. And America danced behind him. By the mid-1950s, Fats Domino's music had become impossible to ignore. His records filled juke joints, high school dances, and army barracks from Louisiana to New York. He had that rare power to make America forget its color line, if only for 3 minutes at a time. But the airwaves were not a level field. Behind every hit record, there was a secret economy, a quiet corruption known as payola. Payola, the system where record labels paid DJs to spin their artists' songs, was the open secret of the music world. If your label had deep pockets, your song soared. If not, it vanished, no matter how good it was. Imperial Records, Fats' label, played the game like everyone else. They greased palms, made calls, sent gifts, because without airplay, there was no success. But here's the twist: even when Domino's music was played, it was often credited to others, or covered by white singers who got the glory. When Pat Boone released his version of Domino's song, it shot to number 1 on the pop charts. The original, rich with Fats's Creole swing, that lazy New Orleans lilt, was considered too raw for white radio. Boone's version cleaned up the accent, softened the rhythm, and sold to America's comfort zone. In boardrooms across the country, white executives cheered. They had found the formula: black genius, white profit. This was the hidden language of the 1950s music business. When white artists covered songs by black musicians, it wasn't called theft, it was called marketing. And every dollar earned by the cover meant another dollar lost by the creator. Domino didn't protest publicly. He knew the system. He knew the risks. Black artists who spoke too loud were blacklisted or worse. So he smiled and played his piano, letting success itself be his resistance. But the pattern ran deep. Fats Domino, Chuck Berry, Little Richard, and so many others laid the groundwork for what America would soon call rock and roll. Yet when the time came to crown a king, it wasn't them. It was Elvis. And though Elvis himself called Fats the real king, the industry had already decided who would wear the crown. That's how payola and power worked, not just through money, but through image. The face on the poster mattered more than the sound on the record. In a segregated America, even music, that most universal of languages, was filtered through color. For every concert he played, for every hit he wrote, there was always someone else collecting the bigger check. But Fats wasn't chasing wealth or fame, he was chasing the joy of the music. He once said, "I just make songs I'd like to hear." That's what made him dangerous and timeless. He didn't fight the system in words. He fought it with melody. With every key struck in defiance, every lyric sung in peace. He proved that you could challenge the world, not by shouting, but by swinging. By the 1970s and 80s, Fats Domino had become a ghost of his own legend. He still drew crowds, still smiled for photos, still played that rolling piano. But the world had changed. Disco, funk, and corporate pop had taken over, and the pioneers of rhythm and blues were fading from the conversation. He turned down invitations to travel, rarely left New Orleans, and trusted only a small circle of people. To the public, it looked like peace. But behind that quiet smile was a story of retreat and exhaustion. Those who knew Fats said he never truly recovered from what the industry did to him. The fame, the touring, the endless contracts where he earned pennies on every dollar. It wore him down. He was one of the highest-selling black artists in history. And yet, by the 1980s, he was barely collecting the royalties he deserved. Where did the money go? That's a question few ever asked, and fewer could answer. The labels changed hands, the rights changed ownership. And Fats, like so many before him, was left with a smile instead of a fortune. Then came Hurricane Katrina in 2005. When the levees broke, New Orleans drowned. And so did the myth that America protects its legends. For days, the media reported that Fats Domino was missing. Some said he had died in the flood. His house in the lower 9th Ward was submerged. His piano and awards destroyed by the water that swallowed a city. When rescuers finally found him alive, sitting quietly in a shelter, the world cheered, but the image was powerful. The man who had once moved millions now sat displaced. An old king watching his kingdom sink beneath the water. After Katrina, he rarely appeared in public again. He refused to leave New Orleans, his roots were there. His memories, his soul. But behind the scenes, the vultures were circling. His catalog, decades of hits, became a goldmine for streaming services and film soundtracks. Licensing deals appeared, tribute albums sold, documentaries aired. And yet, those closest to him said he saw little of that money. They said the checks went elsewhere, to estates, labels, partners whose names were buried deep in old contracts. When Fats Domino passed away in 2017, at 89 years old, the obituaries called him a gentle pioneer, a national treasure, one of the first rock and roll stars. But they said little about the exploitation, the manipulation, or the quiet theft of his life's work. There was no major estate battle, no big lawsuit, just silence. But some whispered that the industry had already gotten what it wanted. They didn't need him alive to profit. His catalog was eternal, and death, as history shows, is often more profitable than life. In the end, maybe that's the quiet tragedy of Fats Domino's story. He was loved by millions, but owned by few. Used gently, never broken, but never free. And if history has a habit of repeating itself, then Fats Domino stands as a warning of how America builds its music legends, profits from their genius, then rewrites the story to make it clean. Fats once said, "They call it rock and roll, I call it rhythm and blues." He never needed a crown to prove who he was. He just needed a piano, a smile, and a world willing to listen. In a world that loves to crown kings, maybe the real ones are the ones who never asked to wear it.